Our 5th anniversary was supposed to be a memory we would hold onto forever. A celebration of everything we had built together, the dreams we shared when things were still simple and full of promise. I had imagined something intimate, maybe even nostalgic, like dinner at the tiny Italian place where we had our first awkward, wonderful date. But Clarissa had other plans. She insisted we do something special, something unforgettable. Those were her exact words. And so we ended up at Alvento's, the restaurant where the rich and famous went to show off, not to eat. The moment we pulled up, I felt out of place. Luxury cars lined the valet area, glittering like trophies under the soft golden lights. Clarissa looked radiant, her designer dress catching the glow, her smile wide and sharp. She wasn't nervous like I was. She belonged here, or at least she wanted to believe she did. Inside, the walls were lined with velvet, and the ceiling shimmered with crystal chandeliers. Every corner was packed with people who seemed to laugh a little too loudly and drink a little too much, like they were auditioning for a reality show. I wanted to turn around and leave, but I didn't want to start a fight on our anniversary. So I swallowed my discomfort and followed her in. The host, a man with a perfect smile and an air of superiority, led us to a private area near a wall of dark mahogany. As we approached, I realized we weren't alone. Clarissa's 2 best friends, Marcy and Bianca, were already waiting, sipping on what looked like $1,000 cocktails. I blinked in surprise. She hadn't told me we'd have company. Clarissa giggled and waved at them, sliding into the booth like she had been planning this all along. I hesitated for a second, then sat beside her, my gut twisting slightly. This wasn't what I had imagined at all. I forced a smile and tried to keep my face neutral. Marcy and Bianca didn't waste a second. They ordered bottle after bottle of the most expensive champagne, laughing loudly and tossing back oysters and caviar like it was just another Tuesday. Every few minutes, they would shove the giant menu in my direction, pointing at something even more outrageous, something I could barely pronounce. Clarissa was in her element, sipping her drink and smiling like a queen among peasants. I sat there, doing mental math in my head, feeling the weight of every order pile up like bricks on my chest. I barely touched my own food, too busy calculating how much this night was going to cost. Finally, when they started debating between 2 absurdly priced desserts, I decided to excuse myself. I told them I was going to the restroom, but really, I headed straight for the front to settle the check. It was something I had always done, taking care of the bill quietly, making sure there were no surprises. I guess old habits die hard. The manager smiled when I approached. He printed out the bill with a little too much flourish, like he enjoyed delivering the final blow. I took the piece of paper from him, and my heart nearly stopped. $35,000. I blinked, convinced I had read it wrong. But the numbers stayed the same, staring back at me like a slap across the face. My hands tightened around the bill. My first instinct was panic, then shame, then anger. Still, I pulled out my card and paid. What else could I do? This was Clarissa's night. I had promised myself not to ruin it, even if it ruined me. As I waited for the receipt, something made me pause. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the universe giving me one last warning before I threw away even more of my life. I don't know. But instead of heading back to the table right away, I lingered by a privacy divider just a few feet away from where Clarissa and her friends sat. At first, all I heard was laughter, the kind of laughter that makes your skin crawl when you know it's not innocent. I took a step closer, heart pounding. That's when I heard Clarissa's voice, clear as day. "He's just my ATM and my last option," she said, laughing so hard she almost spilled her drink. "I'm just waiting for him to clear my debt and set up my business. Then I'll dump him fast." Marcy and Bianca shrieked with laughter. One of them even toasted to it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen in place, while my marriage, my entire life as I knew it, snapped apart like dry twigs underfoot. There wasn't even any dramatic music, no slow-motion heartbreak. Just a cold, clear realization settling over me like fresh concrete. Clarissa didn't love me. Maybe she never had. I was a tool, a stepping stone, a fool with a credit card and a willingness to believe in fairy tales. She had been counting down the days until she could leave me behind, free and clear, with all the benefits and none of the loyalty. I didn't go back to the table. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I turned around, calm and steady, and walked back to the manager. I told him I needed to reverse the charge immediately. He looked confused at first, but when I leaned in and said, "Fraudulent charges, cancel it," he didn't argue. Maybe he had seen it happen before. Maybe he didn't care. Either way, he nodded and tapped a few keys on his computer. It was done. As I stepped outside into the night, the cool air hit me hard, clearing my head like a bucket of ice water. I inhaled deeply, letting the cold burn my lungs. It was over. Not just the dinner. Not just the night. Everything. I didn't even glance back at the building. I didn't want to see her face, her fake smiles, her empty laughter. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing how badly she had broken me. I walked toward my car, the pavement hard and real under my feet. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Clarissa wondering where I had gone. I ignored it. The road stretched out in front of me, dark and unfamiliar. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew one thing. I was never going back. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap across the face. It was cooler than I expected, almost sharp, slicing through my jacket and making me shiver a little. But it wasn't just the weather. It was everything. It was the way my life had just crumbled without warning. It was the way my heart had gone from heavy to completely hollow in a matter of minutes. I stood there for a second, just breathing, staring up at the velvet black sky like maybe the stars had answers they could lend me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, dragging me back to reality. I pulled it out slowly, my thumb hovering over the screen. It was Clarissa, of course. A simple text at first. "Hey babe, you okay?" Taking a while. I stared at it. No anger yet. No suspicion. She didn't know what I had heard. She didn't know I wasn't coming back. I slid the phone back into my pocket without replying. I didn't trust myself to text back. I didn't want to open the floodgates of emotion that were banging against the walls of my chest. I needed to move. I needed to get away from the golden glow of the restaurant, from the laughter floating out through the glass doors, from everything that tied me to the life I was about to leave behind. I climbed into my car, a silver sedan that looked way too plain among the sea of Bentleys and Maseratis, and just sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel. I could still taste the bitterness rising at the back of my throat, like I was about to be sick. I wasn't even sure where I was going to go. I only knew I had to leave. So I started the engine, turned onto the main road, and just drove. I didn't have a plan. No GPS, no destination. Just the endless stretch of highway unraveling under my tires, leading me somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. The streetlights blurred past in long, yellow streaks. I rolled down the window, letting the wind whip against my face, stinging my eyes and cooling the heat that kept trying to rise inside me. My phone buzzed again, then again, and again. I ignored it at first. But after the 6th or 7th time, my curiosity got the better of me. At the next red light, I glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls. 5 texts. "Hey, everything okay? Did you get lost?" Faced with tears of joy. "Where are you? Come back, they're asking about you." "Hello?" Each one more impatient than the last. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat without replying. I wasn't lost. Not anymore. I knew exactly where I was, at the start of the end. The light turned green, and I pressed the gas pedal a little harder than necessary. I wasn't angry, not the way Clarissa would expect. I wasn't about to come storming back into the restaurant demanding answers or causing a scene. That would have given her more power, more satisfaction. No, this was different. This was quiet. This was final. Another wave of notifications buzzed angrily against the seat. I let them pile up, stacking one on top of the other like a tower of desperation. Somewhere around the 20th missed call, the tone of the messages shifted. "Seriously? Where are you? This isn't funny. Answer me." I drove through the city, past places that used to mean something to me. The coffee shop where I first told Clarissa I loved her. The park where I planned our engagement. The old library where we spent rainy afternoons dreaming about the future. Funny how none of those memories hurt now. They felt like scenes from someone else's life, a movie I had watched a long time ago and forgotten about. More buzzing. More calls. More frantic texts. When I finally pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of the city, I checked my phone again out of pure curiosity. I wasn't surprised by what I saw. 135 missed calls and texts. Clarissa wasn't just curious anymore. She was scared. I could almost hear her voice in my head, sharp, shrill, trying to regain control. "Where are you? Why are you doing this? Come back right now, or we are done. I'm serious. Everyone's looking for you. You're ruining everything." I scrolled through them without feeling much of anything. It was like watching a storm rage on the other side of thick glass. I could see the chaos, the fury, but I was untouched. I got out of the car and leaned against the hood, staring up at the empty sky. Out here, away from the city lights, the stars were brighter. It reminded me of when I was a kid, before all the noise and ambition and heartbreak. Back when happiness was simple. It hit me then, an unexpected, almost laughable realization. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. Clarissa's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had released me. I pulled in a deep breath, the air clean and cold and honest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped under someone else's expectations. I didn't feel like I had to twist myself into a shape that would fit her version of happiness. I could finally be myself again, whatever that meant now. I climbed back into the car and drove some more, this time with purpose. I wasn't running away anymore. I was moving forward, moving away from a life built on lies, on transactions dressed up as love. As I merged onto the highway heading west, my phone lit up once again. Another call. Clarissa. I watched the screen flash and fade without reaching for it. I thought about the night we got engaged, about how nervous I had been, how sure I was that Clarissa was the one. I thought about all the hours I had worked, all the sacrifices I had made to give her the life she said she wanted. I thought about how easy it had been for her to plan my replacement, right there at our anniversary dinner, laughing with her friends about how disposable I was. I wasn't disposable. I wasn't her ATM, and I wasn't going back. Not tonight. Not ever. The road stretched out before me, endless and dark and full of possibility. I didn't know exactly where it would lead, but for once, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. I smiled to myself, a real smile, small but genuine. Then I pressed the pedal down a little harder, feeling the engine roar to life beneath me, carrying me away from everything that had once tried to break me. The night swallowed me whole, and I didn't look back. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I had made up my mind. There would be no second chances, no long conversations trying to make sense of what had happened. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to beg for respect that should have been mine all along. No, I was going to do what I should have done years ago, protect myself. The first thing I did was call my bank. I sat in a dusty diner just off the highway, a cold cup of coffee in front of me, my phone pressed to my ear. The woman on the other end of the line was cheerful, her voice full of the kind of brightness that felt almost out of place with the heavy knot sitting in my chest. I explained that I wanted to reverse a payment, the $35,000 charge from Alventos. She placed me on hold for a few minutes, the soft jazz music crackling through the speaker. I stared out the window at the cars rolling past, wondering how many of them carried people who were just as lost as I felt. When she returned, her tone had shifted. Professional now. Careful. I've initiated the dispute, she said. The charge will be reversed within 24 hours, pending final review. In the meantime, I recommend you freeze your accounts for security purposes. Security purposes? I almost laughed. Yeah, that was one way to put it. Yes, I said. Freeze them all. Now. She confirmed it politely, as if it was the most normal thing in the world to lock down your life in a single phone call. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel anything, really. Just a steady, grim sort of focus. The kind you get when you realize you're the only one standing between yourself and disaster. Next, I called my lawyer, Randall Pierce. Randall wasn't just a good lawyer. He was the kind of man who could turn a courtroom into a battlefield and win without raising his voice. I had hired him once before for a small business matter, and I had remembered how sharp and unshakable he was. He answered on the second ring. Morning, he said, his voice crisp. What's the emergency? I laid it all out for him in a few sentences, what I had heard at the restaurant, how I had walked away, what I had already done with the bank. There was a brief pause on the line. Then Randall said, Good. You're thinking clearly. Let's move fast before she does. He instructed me to come by his office that afternoon. There were papers to sign, strategies to discuss, traps to set quietly, legally, and absolutely. I agreed without hesitation. Before I left the diner, I made one more important call to the private banker who managed my personal savings. Over the years, I had built up a modest but solid nest egg, one Clarissa knew existed but had no access to. She had always pushed me to trust her more with it, but something had always made me hesitate. Now I was grateful for that instinct. I transferred every last cent of it into a newly created trust, one that Clarissa couldn't touch even if she tried. It took an hour and a lot of paperwork, but when it was done, I sat back in the booth and finally allowed myself a small breath of relief. She would wake up today thinking everything was normal. She would brush her hair, check her phone, maybe laugh with Marcy and Bianca about how easy it was going to be to bleed me dry. She had no idea that while she was sleeping in, wrapped up in her designer sheets, I was already miles ahead, setting fire to the bridge she thought she would stroll across. I left the diner feeling strangely lighter. I wasn't smiling, not yet. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't drowning in guilt or fear. I was moving, thinking, surviving. And I wasn't doing it for anyone else this time. I was doing it for me. Driving back into the city, the streets looked different. The same places, the same people, but it all felt distant. Like I had peeled away the shiny layer that made everything seem perfect and found the cracks underneath. Clarissa had spent years painting our life in bright, glossy colors. Instagram-perfect vacations, lavish parties, carefully staged photos of smiling brunches and weekend getaways. But underneath it all, it had been hollow. And now that hollowness was crumbling. As I pulled into the underground garage of the office building where Randall worked, my phone vibrated on the seat beside me. Another text. Another call. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. I turned the phone off completely. I wasn't ready to deal with Clarissa's meltdown yet. Let her wonder. Let her stew. Every second she spent panicking was a second I was getting stronger. Randall's office was on the 15th floor, sleek and professional. He greeted me with a firm handshake and ushered me into a conference room lined with thick glass walls and polished wood. No unnecessary small talk. No pity. He laid out the plan in clear, efficient terms. Step 1. File to protect my personal assets immediately. Step 2. Begin gathering evidence, financial records, screenshots, anything that could prove deception or misconduct. Step 3. Wait. Watch. Let Clarissa make the next move, because people like her always did. They always thought they were smarter, faster, untouchable. And when she did, we would be ready. I signed a dozen documents that morning, each one a brick in the wall I was building around myself. Each one a quiet declaration that I was done being anyone's fool. By the time I left Randall's office, the city felt different again. Sharper, more dangerous, but also more honest. Clarissa would go about her day, blissfully unaware that the ground beneath her feet was already cracking. She would smile at strangers. She would post pictures online of her brunch mimosas and her sparkling jewelry. She would laugh with Marcy and Bianca about how easy life was when you had someone else footing the bill. And somewhere around noon, reality would start to slip through the cracks. She wouldn't notice it at first. A card declined at her favorite boutique. A call from the bank that didn't go quite the way she expected. A lingering, gnawing feeling that something was wrong. I could almost picture it. The confusion. The growing panic. The desperate calls to me, trying to fix it, to paper over the fractures with sweet words and promises. But I wasn't going to be there to answer. I wasn't going to be there at all. As I drove back to my apartment, the one she barely visited anymore, I realized something important. I didn't hate Clarissa. I didn't even want revenge, not really. I just wanted my life back. And I was finally ready to take it. It was almost noon when the cracks began to show. I was sitting at the old desk in my apartment, a cup of black coffee growing cold next to me, scrolling through the paperwork Randall had sent over for review. Legal words blurred together, but I stayed focused. Every initial, every signature, every clause, it was all part of building a fortress that Clarissa could never breach. My phone, silent since I turned it off the night before, sat face down on the desk. I didn't need to hear the chaos to know it was happening. I could feel it, like the first rumble before a building collapses. Out there, Clarissa was waking up to a very different world. The first sign must have been small. Maybe she stopped for a coffee and the card reader beeped and flashed red. Maybe she shrugged it off, thinking it was just a glitch. She probably still smiled and tossed her hair, assuming everything would fix itself because it always had before. Then came the second decline, and the third, and the cold, unfamiliar voice of a bank clerk explaining that the accounts were frozen pending investigation, that she had no access to the funds she thought were. I didn't answer. A minute later, a voicemail came through. I pressed play but didn't lift the phone, letting her voice fill the room. "Hey baby," she said, sugary sweet. "There's some kind of issue with my card. Can you call the bank and fix it? Love you." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Love. That word sounded so cheap now. The second voicemail came faster, sharper. "Hey. Seriously, I need you to fix this. They're saying there's a problem with our accounts? What the hell is going on? I muted the phone. Let her stew. By 3 in the afternoon, she was spiraling. The voicemails became frantic, overlapping, one after another. Every few minutes the screen would light up with another missed call, another message. Where is our money? Call me now. This isn't funny. You're ruining my life. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, sipping my cold coffee, watching the city move outside my window like nothing was wrong. I thought about all the times Clarissa had spent my money without asking. The times she'd bragged to her friends about the vacations, the jewelry, the house upgrades. All of it bought with my sacrifices, my late nights at the office, my stress. To her, it had just been background noise. Necessary annoyances to fund the life she believed she deserved. Now, without my wallet wide open, her perfect world was falling apart piece by piece. At 8:47 p.m., a text came through that made me finally pick up the phone. You're ruining my life. There it was. The truth, hidden in plain sight. It was never about us. Never about love. It was always about what I could provide, what she could extract. I was never a partner. I was a resource. I set the phone down again, face down this time, and pushed away from the desk. I needed air. I stepped out onto the balcony, the evening cool against my skin. The city spread out below me, alive with lights and motion. In another life, it might have felt overwhelming, but now it felt peaceful, distant. I sipped a fresh cup of coffee, black and bitter, and watched the world turn without me. Somewhere across town, Clarissa was probably screaming into her phone, pacing her marble floors, tossing her designer bags onto her bed in frustration. Maybe she was calling Marcy and Bianca, spinning frantic stories about a banking error or a jealous hacker. Maybe she was already planning a new scheme to fix it all before her house of cards collapsed completely. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't part of that story. Not anymore. I breathed in deeply, the air sharp and honest in my lungs. It felt like shedding a skin I hadn't even realized I was trapped in. Like stepping out of a shadow into something real. The city lights blurred a little as I blinked, but I didn't let the emotion spill over. I had cried enough over Clarissa in the early years, when I thought love could fix anything. When I thought if I just worked a little harder, loved a little deeper, she would finally see me as enough. I wasn't playing that game anymore. I sat down on one of the old chairs on the balcony, the metal cold through my jeans. Rusty, the stray dog that sometimes wandered the alley below, barked once, chasing something invisible. I smiled at the sound. It was raw and messy and real, everything my life had lacked for years. I checked the time. Almost 9. The texts had stopped coming. Maybe Clarissa had finally realized that no amount of screaming into the void would bring me back. Maybe she was plotting her next move. Maybe she was crying. I didn't care. I thought about everything that had led me here, the warnings I had ignored, the compromises I had made. The little parts of myself I had handed over without noticing, until one day there was barely anything left. And now, piece by piece, I was taking it all back. It wouldn't be easy. Clarissa wasn't the type to go down without a fight. She would rage, accuse, play the victim. She would try every trick she knew to regain control. But I was ready. I stood up, stretching my stiff muscles, and turned back toward the apartment. The place was small compared to the house Clarissa had insisted we buy last year, but it felt bigger somehow. Empty, yes, but full of possibility. I grabbed a notepad from the kitchen counter and started writing a list. Nothing big, just small tasks. Things to reclaim. Things to rebuild. My own credit lines. New passwords. A budget for moving forward. Dreams that were mine alone, not dreams sold to me by someone else's ambition. The list was messy, scribbled, imperfect. And it was beautiful. I taped it to the fridge, smiling at how ridiculous and ordinary it looked there. No grand plans, no master schemes. Just the start of something real. As the night deepened, I sat back down at the desk and drafted an email to Randall, updating him on Clarissa's meltdown. I kept it professional, factual, free of emotion. He would need this record. Every voicemail, every text, every desperate plea would become part of the wall we were building between me and the wreckage Clarissa had created. When I finally crawled into bed, exhausted but clear-headed, I checked my phone one last time. Still no new messages. Good. I set the phone face down on the nightstand, pulled the covers over myself, and let the quiet of the night wash over me. Clarissa's empire of illusions was collapsing, and for the first time in years, I was free enough to watch it fall. I thought Clarissa would slow down after the first wave of panic. Maybe she'd take a step back, think carefully, try to figure things out quietly. I underestimated her. She wasn't built for silence or patience. When screaming into my phone didn't work, she did what she always did. She sent in reinforcements. The first call that morning wasn't from her. It was from Teresa, Clarissa's mother. The same Teresa who used to hand me Christmas presents with a sugary smile, calling me the best thing that ever happened to Clarissa. The same woman who had hugged me at our wedding, whispering that I was family now. All those fake smiles, all that pretend kindness, wiped away in one sharp phone call. I didn't even check the caller ID before I answered. Maybe some part of me was still curious. Maybe I wanted to hear just how fast people could switch sides when the money stopped flowing. "Good morning," I said flatly, already bracing myself. "Good morning," Teresa snapped. "You call this a good morning? Do you have any idea what you're doing to my daughter?" Her voice was high and tight, full of outrage she clearly thought was righteous. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as she continued. "She's in tears. You've frozen the accounts, humiliated her in front of her friends, left her with nothing. How could you abandon your wife like this?" I waited until she finally ran out of breath before speaking. Calm, measured. "I didn't abandon her, Teresa," I said. "I just stopped letting her use me." There was a pause, short but sharp. Then she tried again, her tone shifting from fury to fake concern. "Sweetheart, you're clearly upset. This isn't the way to fix things. Just come home, talk to Clarissa. Work it out like adults. You two love each other." I almost laughed, but it came out as a quiet sigh instead. "Tell me something," I said. "Were you part of her plan, too? Did you help her treat me like an ATM? Were you cheering her on when she decided to throw me away after she got what she wanted?" The silence on the other end was deafening. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could picture her face, the tight mouth, the calculating eyes. Trying to decide if lying would work. Trying to decide if she could still save the situation. She never answered. I hung up. I didn't need to hear another word. The silence told me everything. Clarissa hadn't just stumbled into this behavior. She had been raised in it, surrounded by people who thought loyalty was something you traded for gifts and vacations. Love was just another form of leverage to them. And I had been stupid enough to think I was different. I set the phone down and turned it off again. No use wasting battery life on people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet. An hour later, the second wave came. Marcy first. Her number popped up, and for a split second, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, she would have some human decency. Maybe she would admit it had gone too far. Maybe she would apologize for laughing while my wife made plans to dump me like yesterday's trash. I answered, curious more than anything else. "Hey," Marcy said, her voice too sweet, stretched tight with fake sympathy. "So, we're all really worried about you. Clarissa's been crying nonstop. We're just concerned. Can we meet? Just talk things out." The image of her laughing at that dinner, champagne glass in hand, flashed in my mind. "No," I said simply, and hung up. No yelling. No explanations. Just no. Bianca called next. I didn't even answer. Straight to voicemail, where she left a 2-minute ramble about love and understanding and everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes. Funny word for a calculated betrayal. By noon, even Jeremy, an old mutual friend we hadn't spoken to in months, was trying his luck. "Man, don't be harsh," he texted. "She's sorry. Just go home and fix it." I didn't reply. None of them were worried about me. None of them cared about the betrayal. They only cared that the money train had stopped running and the champagne had run dry. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. It was something colder, calmer than anger. Something final. They were showing me who they really were, and for once, I wasn't making excuses for them. I spent the afternoon clearing out the last few things Clarissa had touched in my apartment. Some old clothes she'd left behind. Photos that didn't mean anything anymore. Trinkets from trips that now felt like bad investments instead of good memories. I boxed it all up and left it in the hallway, ready for the garbage. Out of sight. Out of mind. The sun dipped low, painting the city in gold and shadow. I sat on the balcony again, Rusty barking somewhere down the street, and watched as the world kept spinning without Clarissa in it. There was a time when I thought I couldn't live without her. When I measured my worth by how happy I could make her, how much I could give. Now, the thought of going back made my stomach turn. Let them call. Let them plead. Let them spin whatever stories they wanted to make themselves feel better. I wasn't that man anymore. I was done being the quiet provider. The dependable fool who smiled while being gutted from the inside out. I was rebuilding, brick by brick, a life that didn't have room for people like Clarissa and her army of users. The last call of the day came just as the sky turned navy blue, stars just starting to blink into existence. It was Clarissa herself. I let it ring out. Let it die in silence. No message this time. Maybe even she realized there were no words left that could fix what she broke. I turned off the phone, went inside, and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more desperate attempts to claw back what she thought was hers. But tonight, there was peace. Tonight, there was only the sound of the city breathing, and the steady beat of my own heart, stronger and steadier than it had been in years. 3 days later, the real battle began. It started with a letter. A thick, formal envelope dropped off at my door by a private courier, the kind of delivery that made your stomach clench even before you opened it. I stood there for a moment, turning it over in my hand. No return address. Just my name, written in neat, cold letters. I already knew who it was from before I even ripped it open. Inside was a letter from a law firm. Not just any law firm. Clarissa had gone out and hired Selena Hartwell, a name that carried weight and fear in every corner of the city. Selena was known for her brutal divorce tactics. She didn't negotiate. She destroyed. I sat down at the kitchen table and read the letter slowly, carefully, my pulse steady. The words were all dressed up in legal language, but the message was clear. Clarissa wanted everything. Half of everything I owned. Spousal support, compensation for the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. It echoed around the empty kitchen. Clarissa really believed she was entitled to the life she had pretended to build with me. She believed she could throw me away and still keep the house, the cars, the vacations. She thought because she had played the role of a perfect wife in public, she could cash that performance in now like a winning lottery ticket. She was wrong. I picked up the phone and called Randall. He answered on the second ring. Always ready, always sharp. She made her move, I said. I figured she would, he replied calmly. You ready to make yours? More than ready. We met that afternoon in his office. Randall had already prepared everything. It was almost like he had seen this whole thing coming long before I had. Maybe he had. People like him learned to spot the signs early. He slid a folder across the table to me. A slim, unassuming thing. But inside was power. Evidence. Photos. Screenshots. Bank statements. Audio recordings. Every careless thing Clarissa had ever said or done, neatly organized and ready to be used against her. She had built her whole plan on the idea that I was too blind or too weak to protect myself. She had underestimated me. Randall tapped the folder with one finger. This isn't just a divorce now, he said. This is a reckoning. The plan was simple. File a brutal countersuit. Not just to block her demands, but to expose her. Her hidden debts. Her unreported side hustles. The credit cards she had opened behind my back. The thousands she had siphoned into secret accounts while smiling sweetly across the dinner table. Clarissa hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She had committed financial fraud. And that meant we had leverage. Serious leverage. I signed the papers without hesitation. It felt good. Like taking off a heavy jacket you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. Randall smiled slightly, a rare thing for him. Most people panic at this stage, he said. They get scared. They start second-guessing. I'm not most people, I said quietly. He nodded. No, you're not. The filing went through the next morning. Within hours, Clarissa's camp responded. The tone was different this time. Less arrogant. More cautious. They requested a meeting, an attempt at negotiation before things got uglier. Randall laughed when he read the email. They know they're exposed, he said. They're hoping you'll still be stupid enough to settle. I wasn't. The meeting was set for the end of the week. Until then, all I had to do was stay calm and let the pressure build on their side. And it was building fast. Friends who had once flooded Clarissa's social media with heart emojis and champagne toasts started going silent. Some even quietly unfollowed her. The money was drying up. The invitations were slowing. Without the shiny facade, Clarissa wasn't as popular as she thought she was. Rumors started to swirl, too. Quiet whispers that maybe things weren't as perfect as she had claimed. That maybe she wasn't the victim after all. It wasn't me spreading them. I didn't have to. Truth has a funny way of leaking out when you least expect it. I spent those days preparing. Not just legally, but mentally. I went through old photos, old messages, old memories, and let myself mourn them properly. Not the way you mourn a person who died, but the way you mourn a dream that turned out to be a nightmare. I thought about the boy I had been when I met Clarissa, full of hope, full of trust, willing to give everything to someone who smiled the right way and promised forever. I wasn't that boy anymore. I was something sharper now, something harder, but not bitter, stronger. The night before the meeting, I stood out on the balcony, looking at the stars. I thought about what I had lost, the years, the money, the pieces of myself I had handed over too easily. But I also thought about what I had gained. Clarity. Freedom. A second chance, not with Clarissa, but with myself. Rusty barked down in the alley again, chasing after some invisible foe. I smiled at the sound. Tomorrow, Clarissa would see that the man she thought she could manipulate was gone. Tomorrow, she would realize that when I walked away that night at Alvento's, I wasn't just angry. I was done. Truly, finally done. And nothing she said or did could change that. I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and went to bed. For the first time in a long time, I slept like a man who knew exactly who he was and exactly what he was about to take back. The law office was colder than I remembered. I stood outside for a second before walking in, staring at the tall glass doors reflecting the cloudy sky behind me. The building felt heavy with silence, the kind that settles when everyone inside knows something ugly is about to happen. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I just wanted it over with. Inside, the receptionist barely looked up as she directed me to conference room B. Randall was already there, sitting at the long oak table, a legal pad in front of him, his expression unreadable. He gave me a small nod as I entered. "You ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I said. I wasn't dressed for war. No suit, no tie. Just a simple button-down shirt and dark jeans. I wanted to be comfortable. Clarissa, on the other hand, would probably show up dressed like it was a movie premiere. She couldn't help herself. And right on time, she arrived. The door opened, and there she was, in a tight designer dress, hair and makeup flawless, high heels clicking against the polished floor. She walked in like she still owned the world, a smile pasted onto her face that didn't reach her eyes. For a second, she hesitated when she saw me. Just a flicker, but I caught it. She hadn't expected me to look so calm, so steady. Selena Hartwell followed her in, sharp black suit, steely expression, folders tucked under her arm. She didn't waste time. She gestured for Clarissa to sit down and took her own place across from Randall. "Before we begin," Selena said smoothly, "my client would like a moment to speak privately with Mr. Hayes." Randall opened his mouth, probably to object, but I held up a hand. "It's fine," I said. "1 minute." He gave me a warning look but leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Clarissa leaned in, her perfume hitting me like a wall. Too sweet. Too fake. "Baby," she said in a low voice, the same voice she used when she wanted something. "We don't have to do this. Let's just talk. Just us. No lawyers, no drama." I looked at her carefully, studying the face I used to know so well. "You still think you can fix this with a smile?" I asked quietly. Her lips trembled for half a second before she caught herself. "I made mistakes," she said, voice dripping with rehearsed regret. "We both did. Let's not throw everything away." I almost admired how quickly she shifted gears. One moment the victim, the next the loving wife desperate to save the marriage she had already buried. "You threw it away," I said. I just stopped pretending to catch it. Her eyes flashed, just for a second. The real Clarissa, lurking under the act. She realized then that the old tricks wouldn't work. I leaned back, voice calm, steady. "Anything you want to say," I said, "say it through your lawyer." Clarissa pulled back sharply, her jaw tight, the fake warmth vanishing like mist. She turned her head sharply, signaling to Selena. The room felt colder, like the last pretense had finally dropped. Payment of Clarissa's necessary expenses to maintain her standard of living. Randall let her go on, scribbling something casual on his notepad while she spoke. Then, when she finished, he pushed the slim folder across the table. "Before we discuss any settlements," Randall said smoothly, "you might want to review some material." Selena frowned but opened the folder. Clarissa leaned over to look, and everything changed. Inside was the evidence. Bank statements showing secret accounts. Credit card charges hidden from joint records. Screenshots of her messages bragging to Marcy and Bianca about how easy it was to drain me. And, most devastating of all, a clear audio recording from the night at Alvento's. The night Clarissa called me her ATM and joked about dumping me. Clarissa's face lost all its color. Selena didn't blink, but I saw the way her lips pressed tighter together. This is inadmissible, Clarissa whispered fiercely, her hand trembling on the table. Randall smiled politely. Actually, perfectly admissible under the state's consent laws. You were in a public place. No expectation of privacy. Clarissa turned to me, eyes wide, searching for mercy. I gave her none. You can't do this, she hissed under her breath, desperate now. You can't ruin me. You ruined yourself, I said simply. Selena closed the folder carefully and folded her hands. My client, she said, voice colder now, is willing to negotiate. Randall nodded once, already expecting it. Good. Because if not, we'll be happy to proceed to court. Full disclosure. Public record. The room felt tight, suffocating. Clarissa's hands gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was just another person who thought she could build an empire on lies and never pay the price. The negotiation was short after that. Clarissa dropped most of her demands. She would walk away with far less than she expected. No alimony. No fancy house. No more private shopping sprees or luxury vacations. Just enough to get a modest apartment, a used car, a normal life, a life she had always thought was beneath her. We signed the preliminary agreements right there. Clarissa's signature was shaky, like her hand barely knew how to finish what she started. When it was done, she stood up slowly, gathering her things. She didn't look at me, didn't say goodbye, didn't ask for forgiveness. Good. There was nothing left to say. Randall shook my hand firmly as they left the room. You handled that better than most, he said. You kept your head. I lost enough already, I said. I wasn't about to lose that too. I watched Clarissa disappear down the hallway, her expensive heels clicking on the tile, sounding more like an ending than anything else. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt free. Completely, utterly free. I stepped outside into the afternoon sun, breathing in the sharp, clear air. The war was over, and I had won. Not because I crushed her, but because I chose myself. Finally. It didn't take long for Clarissa to show her true colors after the meeting. For a few days, there was silence. I thought maybe she had accepted reality, that she would take the loss quietly and disappear from my life just as quickly as she had wrecked it. But people like Clarissa don't know how to lose gracefully. They only know how to claw, kick, and scream when they realize they're no longer in control. The first shot came through social media. One morning, while sipping coffee on my balcony, I got a text from an old coworker. It was just a link and a message. Thought you should see this. I clicked it. There it was, Clarissa's latest masterpiece. A long, tearful post about how she had been trapped in an abusive marriage, how she had sacrificed everything for a man who never supported her dreams. She painted herself as the victim, the poor, heartbroken woman left penniless and abandoned by a cruel, greedy husband. I stared at the post for a long moment, not angry, not surprised, just tired. The comments were full of sympathy. Stay strong, Queen. You deserve better. Men like that never change. Some of her friends, people who used to come to our house and laugh at my jokes while eating the food I paid for, were cheering her on like it was some kind of sport. But not everyone. Hidden among the flood of sympathy were a few different comments. Funny, didn't you just buy a new Chanel bag last month? I thought you said you had your own business. Didn't you brag about him paying your bills last week? Small cracks in the perfect victim story. I didn't reply. I didn't post a defense. I didn't even like the comments that hinted at the truth. Let her tell her story. Let her spin her little fantasy. I knew the real story. And more importantly, so did the people who mattered. The second attack was even more pathetic. She started showing up. At first, it was just small things. A car idling too long outside my apartment. A glimpse of a familiar figure ducking behind a pillar near my office building. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe she was just trying to scare me, to remind me that she wasn't gone yet. Then one afternoon, as I was leaving work, she was just there. Standing by the entrance, sunglasses too big for her face, pretending to be casual but clearly waiting. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. Without the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, the crowd of friends, she looked smaller. Tired. Can we talk? She said, stepping into my path. I didn't stop walking. There's nothing to say, I replied. Please, she said, reaching out to grab my sleeve. Everything's a mess. You can't just throw away what we had. I pulled my arm free, not roughly, just firmly. You already did, I said. You just didn't expect to lose, too. Her face crumpled for a second, And for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the real Clarissa. Not the polished princess. Not the Instagram queen. Just a scared, selfish person who had finally run out of moves. She didn't follow me. She just stood there as I walked away. But she didn't give up. 2 days later, she showed up at my office, causing a scene in the lobby, crying, shouting about how I had abandoned her, how I owed her another chance. Security had to escort her out. I watched from upstairs, hidden behind the tinted windows, feeling nothing but exhaustion. She wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to win back the lifestyle, the image. And when that didn't work, she got desperate. Rumors started flying. She told anyone who would listen that I had been unfaithful, that I had hidden secret bank accounts, that I had emotionally abused her. But the more she talked, the worse it got for her. People who knew me, people who had seen the real story, started stepping away from her. They didn't fight her publicly. They just disappeared. Invitations stopped coming. The friends she had built her fake life around didn't want to be dragged into her drama. Even Marcy and Bianca grew quiet. It turns out loyalty dries up fast when the champagne stops flowing. Through it all, I stayed silent. Not because I was weak. Not because I was scared. Because I didn't need to fight a battle that had already been won. I kept showing up to work. I kept walking rusty in the mornings. I kept paying my bills, drinking my coffee, breathing in the quiet, steady life I was building for myself again. Clarissa tried to turn the world against me. But the truth was simple. She had lost me. And without me, all she had left was the noise. One afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Callahan, the old mentor who had helped me get my start in the construction firm years ago. He didn't mention Clarissa by name. Didn't bring up the rumors or the drama. He just said, "Proud of you, son. It's not easy to walk away from a storm like that and keep your head up." It meant more than he probably realized. Not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me that not everyone could be fooled by fake tears and flashy lies. Some people still saw the truth. And I had learned, finally, to see it too. By the end of the month, Clarissa had stopped showing up. The text slowed to a trickle. The social media posts got fewer and sadder, like a campfire burning out in the rain. She wasn't over it. She never would be. But she had finally accepted what I had known from the moment I walked out of that restaurant. Her empire was gone, and I wasn't coming back to rebuild it. After the dust settled, after the noise faded, I found myself standing in the middle of my own life again, a life I barely recognized but was ready to rebuild. The first thing I did was move back into my old condo. It wasn't anything fancy. A modest 2-bedroom place tucked into a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city. I had kept it all those years, renting it out while Clarissa insisted we live somewhere worthy of her image. She always called the condo small and embarrassing. But when I walked back through the doors with a single suitcase and a second-hand coffee maker, it felt like coming home. The walls were still the same soft gray I had painted before meeting Clarissa. The hardwood floors still creaked in the same spots. The windows still flooded the living room with golden light every morning. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't luxurious. But it was mine. The first few nights were the hardest. I won't lie about that. Even though I knew I had made the right choice, there were moments when the silence felt almost too loud. I'd wake up expecting to hear Clarissa's voice in the kitchen, her heels clicking on the floors, the faint scent of her expensive perfume drifting down the hall. And there would be nothing. Just me. At first, it felt lonely. Then it started feeling peaceful. I spent hours going through old things, boxes filled with books, old photos, clothes I had forgotten I owned. Things that reminded me of the man I used to be before I tried so hard to become what someone else wanted. Piece by piece, I began reclaiming him. I sold the car Clarissa had insisted I lease, an overpriced foreign thing that guzzled gas and screamed, "Look at me," everywhere it went. I didn't need it anymore. I bought a reliable used truck instead, something sturdy, something real. I cleaned out the last of the clothes Clarissa had left behind. Designer heels she never wore. Dresses with tags still attached. Bags she had demanded but forgotten about the moment something newer came along. I boxed it all up, called a local charity, and had them haul it away. It felt like tearing out the last weeds from a garden that was finally ready to grow again. One Saturday afternoon, while walking through the city market, I stumbled across a local animal rescue booth. I wasn't planning to adopt a dog. I wasn't planning anything at all. But then I saw him. Rusty. A scrappy brown and white mutt with one floppy ear and the saddest eyes I had ever seen. The volunteer said he had been abandoned twice already, that he didn't trust easily anymore, that he needed someone patient. I didn't hesitate. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just two broken things finding each other at the right time. Either way, I took him home. Rusty was skittish at first. He didn't know what to make of me, of the quiet apartment, of the soft bed I bought him. But slowly, day by day, he started to trust. A tail wag here, a cautious lick there. He followed me from room to room, sitting at my feet when I worked, curling up on the couch when I watched TV. He didn't ask for much, just kindness, patience, a steady hand. And in return, he gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing: loyalty without strings. Real loyalty. The kind that doesn't vanish when the money dries up or the cameras turn off. Some nights, sitting out on the balcony with Rusty at my side and the city lights twinkling around us, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayals, the lies, the heartbreak. It didn't hurt anymore. It just felt like a story that had happened to someone else. A story I had survived. Every once in a while, my phone would buzz with a message from an unknown number. "Can we talk? Please, just 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I miss you." I never answered. There was nothing left to say. Clarissa had made her choices. And so had I. I spent more time with old friends, the ones who hadn't cared about flashy dinners or Instagram posts. I reconnected with my brother, who had quietly stayed out of the drama, offering support without ever asking for anything in return. We talked about real things. Work, dreams, regrets. Not about Clarissa. Never about Clarissa. She was part of my past, and I wasn't dragging her into my future. I even started volunteering again, something I hadn't done in years. Twice a week, I spent evenings at a local youth center, helping teach financial literacy classes to underprivileged teens. At first, I felt out of place. What did I have to offer them? But the more I talked to them about budgets, savings, building a life from scratch, the more I realized I was also reminding myself. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a fool. I was a survivor. One evening, while locking up after a class, one of the boys, a sharp, funny kid named Marcus, asked me why I volunteered. I thought about it for a second. "Because sometimes life breaks you down," I said. "And you need someone to show you how to build yourself back up again." He nodded, like he understood more than he let on. So did I. The condo felt less empty with each passing day. Not because it was filled with stuff, but because it was filled with peace. Real peace. Not the kind you buy with gifts or pretend to have for pictures. The kind you earn by surviving the worst and choosing not to let it define you. The kind you build, brick by brick, out of patience, forgiveness, and a stubborn refusal to give up on yourself. The kind that no one, not Clarissa, not anyone, could ever take away again. It's funny how life works sometimes. You spend years chasing something you think will make you happy: money, status, love that looks good from the outside. And when it all crashes down, you think you've lost everything. But sometimes, losing everything is the only way you find what actually matters. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I found myself walking through the city center, not really thinking, just letting my feet take me wherever they wanted. It was a chilly evening, the kind where you could see your breath, and most people were rushing to get home, heads down against the wind. I wasn't in a rush. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. That's when I saw it, a small flyer taped to a street lamp. Volunteer Opportunity Financial Literacy Center for Youth. Something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the memory of how lost I had felt once. Maybe it was the thought that if someone had taught me to value myself before trying to build my worth around someone else, things might have been different. I kept walking, but the idea stuck in my mind. A week later, I signed up. That's how I met Sophia. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She wasn't the kind of person who walked into a room demanding attention. She was the program director, smart, sharp-witted, with a laugh that felt more real than anything I had heard in years. She had a way of making you feel like you mattered just by listening, not because she needed something from you, but because she was actually interested. We started talking after one of the evening classes, standing by the old coffee machine in the break room. I don't even remember what we said at first. Something about the terrible coffee, maybe. Something about the weather. Normal stuff. But then it wasn't normal anymore. It was easy. Natural. We didn't talk about brands or money or vacations. We talked about values. About dreams that didn't have price tags. About second chances and how sometimes the best parts of your life come after the worst heartbreaks. There were no games with her. No tests to pass. No hoops to jump through. It wasn't about trying to impress or outshine. It was about being real. Over the next few months, we grabbed coffee a few more times after classes, walked Rusty in the park, shared quiet moments without needing to fill the silence. There were no fancy dinners, no flashing cameras, no social media posts declaring how perfect everything was. Just two people, finding something honest in a world that usually wasn't. I took it slow. So did she. Neither of us was in a hurry to paint over the scars we carried. One evening, sitting on a bench at the park while Rusty chased squirrels in circles, Sophia turned to me and asked, almost shyly, "Do you ever regret it? Everything that happened?" I thought about it for a moment. "Sometimes," I said, "but not because I miss her. I regret losing pieces of myself trying to be enough for someone who never really wanted me to begin with." Sophia nodded, like she understood. "And now?" she asked. I smiled, watching Rusty roll in the grass like he didn't have a care in the world. "Now I'm just grateful," I said. "Grateful that I got out. Grateful that I didn't let it break me completely. Grateful for second chances." She smiled back, a soft, warm smile that settled something deep inside me. It wasn't a big, dramatic moment. There were no fireworks, no swelling music. It was just two broken people sitting quietly, building something new, brick by brick, without even realizing it. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to earn love. I wasn't trying to fix someone or be fixed. I was just living, breathing, existing, and that was enough. Clarissa's voice, her shadow, her games, they didn't haunt me anymore. She was a chapter, not the whole book. A lesson, not the definition of my worth. Sophia and I kept seeing each other, but we didn't rush into labels or promises. We didn't need to. What we didn't need to be shouted from rooftops or posted online for strangers to applaud. It just was. One night, sitting in my living room, Rusty snoring at our feet, Sophia looked around and said, "This place feels peaceful." I laughed a little. It's taken a long time to get it that way. She didn't ask for details. She didn't dig into old wounds. She just smiled, leaned her head on my shoulder, and said, "You deserve peace." For a long time, I didn't believe that. But sitting there, with the simple weight of her trust resting against me, I finally started to believe it might be true. I wasn't anyone's ATM anymore. I wasn't anyone's backup plan. I wasn't a fool chasing an illusion. I was a man who had walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. And for once, I wasn't investing in someone else's dream at the cost of my own. I was building something real, something that belonged to me. Maybe it would last forever. Maybe it wouldn't. But whatever happened, it would be honest. And that was worth more than any fancy dinner or designer ring or fake smile ever could be. I scratched Rusty behind the ears, feeling his tail thump lazily against the floor, and smiled. The past was over. The wreckage had been cleared. The walls were down. And the life I was building now? It was mine. All mine. And I wasn't giving it away ever again.